The starship Resolute moved slowly through the dark space between two distant suns. It was a human ship, one of the largest ever built, carrying 300 crew members across the galaxy. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the stars pass by on the main screen. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for 20 years, but this mission was different from all the others. Humanity had finally made contact with alien life. Not just one species, but many. 12 different alien races had formed something called the Galactic Concord, a group that worked together for peace and trade across hundreds of star systems. Humans were the newest species to be invited, and many of the aliens were not happy about it. Daniel looked at the datapad in his hand. The report showed everything humanity had done wrong in its history. Wars, pollution, violence. The aliens had studied Earth for decades before making contact, and they had seen all the bad things humans had done to each other. Some of the alien species thought humans were too dangerous to join the Concord. Others thought humans were too young and stupid. Only a few believed humans deserved a chance. The Cathari were the ones who hated humans the most. Daniel put down the datapad and walked to the window. In the distance, he could see the Cathari homeworld, a blue and silver planet called Verthan. It was beautiful, covered in tall crystal mountains and deep purple oceans. The Cathari had lived there for over 10,000 years. They were one of the oldest races in the galaxy, and they did not trust newcomers. Lieutenant Maria Santos walked up beside him. She was the ship's language expert, a young woman with dark hair and quick eyes. She had spent 3 years learning the Cathari language and customs. She knew more about them than anyone else on the ship. "Commander," she said quietly, "we will arrive at the Cathari vessel in 2 hours. I need to brief the crew one more time." Daniel nodded. "Gather everyone in the main hall. I want every person on this ship to understand what we are dealing with." Maria left to make the announcement, and Daniel stayed at the window. He thought about his wife and daughter back on Earth. His daughter Lucy was only 8 years old. She had cried when he left for this mission. She did not understand why her father had to go so far away. Daniel had promised her he would come back safely. He hoped he could keep that promise. 1 hour later, the entire crew gathered in the main hall. Daniel stood at the front and looked at their faces. Some were young, fresh from the academy. Others were old veterans who had seen many strange things in space. All of them looked nervous. "Listen carefully," Daniel began. "In a few hours, we will dock with a Cathari ship called the Eternal Vigil. We are there to meet with their leaders and show them that humanity can be trusted. This is the most important mission any of us have ever been on. If we fail, humanity may never be accepted into the Galactic Concord. We will be alone in the galaxy, surrounded by species who fear and hate us." He paused to let his words sink in. "The Cathari are not like us. They have rules that seem strange, but we must follow them exactly. The most important rule is this: do not touch a Cathari, ever, for any reason. In their culture, physical contact from an outsider is seen as an act of war. It means you are trying to control them or hurt them. Even an accident could destroy everything we are trying to build." Maria stepped forward to add more details. "The Cathari communicate through words and gestures, but never through touch. Even family members rarely touch each other. Children are raised with almost no physical contact. It makes them very different from humans, who use touch to show love and friendship. You must control your instincts. No handshakes. No pats on the back. No hugging. Nothing." A young officer named Kevin raised his hand. "What if one of them touches us first?" Maria shook her head. "That will not happen. The Cathari would rather die than touch an outsider. It goes against everything they believe." Daniel took over again. We will be accompanied by Ambassador Lisa Monroe. She will do most of the talking. The rest of us are there to show respect and stay silent. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not move unless told to move. The Kethari will be watching every single thing we do. They are looking for any excuse to reject us. The crew listened in complete silence. They understood how much was at stake. After the briefing, Daniel returned to his quarters to prepare. He put on his formal uniform, the dark blue one with the gold buttons that he only wore for important occasions. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a tired man who carried too much weight on his shoulders. There was a knock on his door. It was Lisa Monroe, the ambassador. She was a small woman with white hair and sharp eyes. She had spent her whole life negotiating difficult treaties between nations on Earth. Now she had the hardest job of all, convincing aliens that humans were worth saving. "Are you ready, Commander?" she asked. "As ready as I will ever be," he replied. Lisa smiled, but there was no joy in it. "I have read every report about the Kethari. They have never trusted another species completely. They fought wars for thousands of years before helping to form the Concord. Even now, they keep to themselves. They trade with other species, but they do not form friendships. They see the galaxy as a dangerous place full of enemies." Daniel nodded. "Then, why did they agree to meet with us?" "Because the other species in the Concord voted to give humanity a chance. The Kethari could not refuse without breaking the alliance. But they are hoping we will fail. They want us to make a mistake so they can say they were right about us all along." The ship shook slightly as it began to dock with the Eternal Vigil. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment of truth. Everything humanity had worked for came down to the next few hours. He walked with Lisa to the main airlock, where the rest of the delegation waited. Maria was there, along with 6 security officers in formal uniforms. They carried no weapons. The Kethari had forbidden it. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss, and Daniel got his first look at the inside of an alien ship. The walls were made of something that looked like glass but felt warm to the touch. Soft blue lights glowed from the ceiling. The air smelled strange, like flowers mixed with metal. A group of Kethari waited for them on the other side. They were tall and thin, with silver blue skin that seemed to glow in the light. Their eyes were large and completely black, like pools of ink. They wore long robes of white and gray, and they stood perfectly still as the humans approached. No one spoke. No one moved. Daniel took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown. The reception hall aboard the Eternal Vigil was the largest room Daniel had ever seen on any ship. It stretched out in every direction, with walls that curved upward into a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Hundreds of beings filled the space, representatives from all 12 species of the Galactic Concord. Daniel had never seen so many different kinds of life in one place. Some of the aliens looked almost human, with 2 arms and 2 legs and faces that could show emotion. Others were completely strange. There were beings with 4 arms and 6 eyes. There were creatures that floated in the air without any visible means of support. There were things that looked like walking plants, and others that seemed to be made of living stone. All of them turned to watch as the human delegation entered. Daniel felt every eye in the room focus on him. He kept his face calm and walked forward with steady steps. Lisa Monroe walked beside him, her head held high. Behind them came Maria and the security team, all moving in perfect formation. The Kethari had arranged the hall so that the humans had to walk through the center of the crowd to reach the raised platform at the far end. It was a test, Daniel realized. They wanted to see how the humans would react to being surrounded by so many alien species. They wanted to see fear. Daniel refused to show any. On the raised platform stood the leaders of the Concord. Each species had sent their highest representative. But the one who stood at the very center, the one who commanded the most attention, was the Kethari High Counselor. His name was Verteth, and he was over 300 years old. His silver-blue skin had faded to a pale gray, and deep lines marked his face. His black eyes watched the humans with cold interest. Thought the walk to the platform felt like it took forever. Daniel could hear whispers in dozens of different languages. He could feel the judgment in the air. These beings had watched humanity from afar for decades. They had seen the wars, the cruelty, the destruction. Now they were deciding whether to give humans a chance or cast them out forever. When the delegation reached the platform, they stopped and waited. Protocol demanded that the host speak first. Verteth stepped forward and began to speak in the Kethari language. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. Maria translated quietly through a small device in Daniel's ear. We gathered today to consider whether the species known as humanity should be granted full membership in the Galactic Concord, Verteth said. This is not a decision we make lightly. The Concord has stood for 5,000 years because we choose our members with great care. We do not accept those who bring war and chaos to the stars. He paused and looked directly at the humans. Humanity is young. They have existed for only a brief moment compared to the great civilizations represented here. In that short time, they have fought countless wars among themselves. They have destroyed their own planet with pollution and greed. They have created weapons capable of ending all life on their world. These are not the actions of a species ready to join the Concord. Daniel kept his face still, but inside he felt anger rising. Yes, humanity had made mistakes, but they had also done great things. They had created art, music, and literature. They had cured diseases and explored their solar system. They had learned from their errors and tried to become better, but he could not speak. Protocol demanded silence until the humans were given permission to respond. Verteth continued for a long time, listing every crime humanity had ever committed. He spoke of the world wars, the nuclear bombs, the famines caused by human greed. He spoke of the pollution that had nearly killed Earth's oceans. He spoke of the violence that still existed in many parts of the human world. Other representatives from the Concord nodded along. Some looked at the humans with disgust. Others looked curious, as if they were watching animals in a cage. Finally, Verteth stopped speaking and gestured toward Lisa Monroe. The human ambassador may now respond. Lisa stepped forward and bowed slightly. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. I, Counselor Verteth, honored representatives of the Concord. Thank you for allowing us to speak. Everything you have said about humanity is true. We have made terrible mistakes. We have caused great suffering, both to ourselves and to our world. We do not deny this. She paused and looked around the room. But we have also learned from our mistakes. Every war taught us the value of peace. Every disaster taught us the importance of working together. Every failure taught us to try again, to do better, to become more than we were. Humanity is not perfect. We never will be. But we are always growing, always changing, always reaching for something better. Daniel watched the faces of the alien representatives. Some seemed interested in Lisa's words. Others remained skeptical. We do not ask you to trust us because of what we have done, Lisa continued. We ask you to give us a chance to show you what we can become. We bring nothing to this Concord, but our willingness to learn and our desire to be part of something greater than ourselves. We know we are the youngest species here. We know we have much to prove. But we believe that every civilization deserves the chance to grow. She stopped speaking and bowed again. Verteth stared at her for a long moment. His black eyes revealed nothing. Then he turned to address the other representatives. We will hear from the other members of the Concord before making our decision. Let each species speak their piece. One by one, the representatives gave their opinions. Some spoke in favor of humanity. They said that every species had made mistakes in their youth, and that growth was possible. Others spoke against. They said that humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent to be trusted. The debate went on for what felt like hours. Daniel stood perfectly still, his legs aching, his mind racing. The future of his entire species was being decided by beings who looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. Then something unexpected happened at the edge of the hall. Near a group of HFY officials, there was a small commotion. A child, a young HFY boy with silver skin and huge dark eyes, had broken free from his guardian. He was running through the crowd, weaving between the tall alien bodies. At first, no one paid attention. Children sometimes did silly things. But then Daniel realized where the boy was running. He was running straight toward the humans. The crowd began to notice. Gasps and whispers spread through the hall. The HFY around the boy tried to grab him, but he was too fast. He slipped through their hands like water. Daniel watched the small figure getting closer and closer. He saw the look on the boy's face, a mixture of curiosity and excitement, and something else that Daniel could not name. The child had no fear. He was running toward the humans like they were the most interesting thing he had ever seen. The entire hall fell silent. Every HFY in the room froze in place. Their faces showed horror, shock, disbelief. Daniel looked at Verteth on the platform and saw something he had never expected to see on that ancient face. Fear. The boy kept running. His small feet made soft sounds on the glowing floor. His dark eyes were fixed on Daniel, only on Daniel, as if the commander was the only person in the universe who mattered. And then the child reached him and stopped, standing just inches away, looking up with those huge alien eyes. No one moved. No one breathed. The silence was so complete that Daniel could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He had no idea what to do. Daniel stared down at the small HFY child. The boy was tiny, barely reaching Daniel's waist. His silver blue skin glowed softly in the light of the great hall. His black eyes were enormous, taking up nearly half his face. And they looked up at Daniel with an expression that seemed almost hungry. Around them, the world had stopped. Daniel could see the HFY guards reaching for their weapons. He could see Verteth on the platform, his ancient face twisted with something between horror and rage. He could see the other alien species watching with wide eyes, waiting to see what would happen next. Maria's voice came through his earpiece, barely a whisper. "Commander, do not move. Do not touch him. In their culture, this is a disaster. The child has broken one of their most sacred rules. If you touch him, they will see it as an act of war." Daniel did not move. He barely breathed. His mind raced through everything he had learned about the HFY. Touch was forbidden. Contact with outsiders was seen as a threat. Even family members rarely touched each other. A child approaching a stranger like this was unthinkable. But the boy was still there, still looking up at him with those dark eyes. A HFY woman pushed through the crowd, her face filled with terror. She had to be the boy's mother. She was calling out in her language, words that Maria quickly translated. "Kelveth. Come back. Come back now." But the child did not move. He stayed exactly where he was, inches from Daniel, staring up at the human as if he had found something wonderful. Daniel's training told him to step back. His orders told him to avoid any contact. Every rule he had learned said he should put distance between himself and this child. One wrong move could destroy humanity's chance at joining the Concord. One wrong gesture could start a war. But his heart told him something different. He looked at the boy and saw the face of every child he had ever known. He saw his daughter Lucy, who always ran to hug him when he came home. He saw the children in the refugee camps he had helped during his time in the military, kids who had lost everything but still found ways to smile. He saw every scared, lonely, curious child he had ever met. This boy was not human. His skin was silver, his eyes were black, and he came from a species that had existed for thousands of years before humanity learned to walk upright. But in his face, Daniel saw something universal, something that crossed all the boundaries of species and culture and time. He saw a child who wanted connection. Daniel made his decision in that moment. He did not know if it was the right choice. He did not know what would happen next. But he knew that he could not reject this child. He could not step back and leave the boy standing there, alone and confused, in front of hundreds of watching eyes. Slowly, carefully, Daniel lowered himself to one knee. He did not reach out. He did not touch the boy. He simply brought himself down to the child's level, so that they were looking at each other face to face. The hall seemed to hold its breath. The boy's eyes widened even more. He tilted his head to one side, studying Daniel with intense curiosity. Behind him, his mother had stopped calling out. She stood frozen, her hands over her mouth, watching. Daniel kept his hands at his sides. He made no sudden movements. He simply looked at the child and waited. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched out, heavy and thick. Daniel could feel sweat forming on his forehead. His knees ached against the hard floor, but he did not move. Then the boy did something that no one expected. He lifted his small silver hand and placed it flat against Daniel's chest, right over his heart. The gasp that went through the hall was like a wave. Daniel heard voices rising in shock and disbelief. He heard weapons being drawn. He heard Verteth saying something sharp and angry in the Cathari language, but he did not look away from the child. The boy's hand was warm against his chest. Daniel could feel the small fingers pressing through the fabric of his uniform. The child's face showed no fear, no hesitation. He seemed completely focused on what he was doing. "He is feeling your heartbeat," Maria whispered in Daniel's ear. "Commander, I do not understand what is happening. This should not be possible." Cathari children are taught from birth to never touch strangers. They grow up terrified of physical contact. This boy is acting against every instinct his species has developed over 10,000 years. Daniel did not respond. He stayed perfectly still, letting the child feel his heart beating. The boy's mother finally found her voice again. She spoke rapidly in her language, and Maria translated. "Please forgive him. Please. He does not know what he is doing. He was born different. He feels things that others cannot feel. He did not mean to cause offense." Verteth stepped down from the platform. His guards moved with him, forming a protective circle. The old Cathari's face was unreadable as he approached Daniel and the child. "What is happening here?" he demanded. Maria translated his words in real time. "Why does this child touch the human? Why does the human not pull away?" Daniel finally spoke, his voice calm and quiet. "Because he is a child. Because he came to me without fear. Because I will not reject anyone who offers trust." Maria translated his words, and a murmur went through the crowd. Verteth stared at Daniel for a long moment. His black eyes were like windows into deep space, cold and ancient and full of secrets. Then he looked down at the boy. "Calveth," he said, his voice softer now. "What do you feel?" The child did not look away from Daniel. His hand remained pressed against the human's heart. When he spoke, his voice was small and high, like a bell ringing in a distant room. Maria translated. "Warm. He feels warm. Not like us. Not cold inside. Warm." Verteth's expression changed. Something flickered in those dark eyes, something that looked almost like surprise. He turned to the boy's mother. "Your son," he said. "He has the old gift, the ability to sense what others feel. I thought this bloodline had died out centuries ago. The mother nodded, tears running down her face. He was born with it. He has always been able to feel the emotions of others. He cannot control it. He simply knows what people feel inside. Verteth looked back at Daniel and the child. The boy still had not moved his hand. His face showed complete peace, as if he had found exactly what he was looking for. This child, Verteth said slowly, has never approached any being outside his immediate family. He fears touch, like all our kind. He runs from strangers. He hides from new faces. In 6 years of life, he has never willingly made contact with another person. He paused, and his next words fell like stones into still water. Until now. The hall erupted into whispers. Daniel stayed on his knee, the child's hand on his heart, and wondered what this moment would mean for everything that came next. The whispers in the hall grew louder, spreading like fire through dry grass. Beings from a dozen different worlds talked among themselves, trying to understand what they had just seen. A Catharic child, born into a culture that feared touch above all else, had willingly placed his hand on a human's heart. Daniel remained on his knee, perfectly still. The boy's small hand was still pressed against his chest. He could feel the warmth of those tiny fingers through his uniform. It was strange, he thought, how similar they felt to human hands. Different color, different shape, but the same gentle pressure of a child seeking connection. Verteth stood above them, his ancient face showing emotions that Daniel could not read. The old Cathari seemed to be fighting some internal battle, his thoughts hidden behind those black eyes. The boy's mother stepped forward slowly. She moved like someone walking through a dream, unsure if any of this was real. Tears still ran down her silver-blue face, leaving wet tracks that glowed in the soft light of the hall. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. Maria translated every word. "Please do not hurt my son. He did not mean to cause trouble. He cannot help what he feels. Since he was born, he's been different from other children. He senses things that others cannot sense. He knows when people are sad or happy or angry, even when they hide it. He has never been wrong." She fell to her knees beside Daniel, lowering herself to his level. Her eyes met his, and he saw desperation there. "He has never touched a stranger before," she continued. "He has never wanted to. Other beings frighten him. He feels their emotions, and they are always cold, always guarded, always full of fear and suspicion. But you—" She stopped, struggling to find words. "You are different. He told me before we came here today. He said the humans felt different. He said they were not cold inside." Daniel thought about this. He thought about all the times humans had been called violent, aggressive, dangerous. He thought about the wars that had marked human history, the cruelty that existed in the human heart. But he also thought about something else he thought about love. Humans loved fiercely. They loved their families, their friends, their communities. They loved strangers they had never met, sending help across oceans when disaster struck. They loved animals, plants, the very planet they lived on. They loved ideas and dreams and the endless possibility of tomorrow. Maybe that was what the child felt. Maybe the warmth he sensed was not just body heat, but something deeper. The fire that burned inside every human heart. The thing that made them create art and music and poetry. The force that drove them to explore and discover and reach for the stars. Daniel looked at the boy. Those huge dark eyes looked back at him without fear. Very slowly, very gently, Daniel lifted his own hand. He did not grab the child. He did not pull him close. He simply placed his hand over the boy's hand, the one that rested on his heart. A soft touch. A small gesture. But in the silence of that great hall, it felt like the most important thing Daniel had ever done. The boy smiled. It was a strange expression on an alien face. The Cathari mouth was different from a human mouth, shaped differently, moving differently. But the meaning was the same: joy, happiness, the pure, simple pleasure of connection. Daniel smiled back. Around them, the whispers had stopped. Every being in the hall was watching now, completely silent. Even Verteth had gone still, his ancient eyes fixed on the scene before him. The boy's mother was crying openly now, but her tears had changed. They were no longer tears of fear. Something else shone in her eyes, something that looked like hope. Lisa Monroe stepped forward, carefully. She spoke in a soft voice, and Maria translated her words for the Cathari to hear. "High Counselor Verteth," she said, "I believe this moment speaks louder than any words I could offer. This child, with his gift of sensing true feelings, has shown you what humanity carries inside. Not the violence of our history, not the mistakes of our past, but the warmth that lives in our hearts, the desire to connect, the need to love and be loved." Verteth did not respond immediately. He watched Daniel and the child for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the hall. He lowered himself to his knees. Gasps echoed through the crowd. A high counselor of the Cathari had not knelt before anyone in over 1,000 years. It was an act of humility that their culture reserved for the most sacred moments. To see Verteth, the oldest and most respected of their leaders, kneeling on the floor beside a human and a child, was something that would be remembered for generations. The old Cathari reached out his hand and placed it over Daniel's hand, which still rested over the child's hand, which still rested over Daniel's heart. 3 hands, 3 beings, 3 points of connection in a universe that suddenly felt a little smaller. "I am old," Verteth said, his rough voice barely above a whisper. "I have lived for over 300 years. I have seen wars that lasted centuries. I have watched species rise and fall. I have learned to trust nothing and no one. My people became strong by keeping others at a distance. We survived by building walls around our hearts." He paused, looking at the child. "But this boy has no walls. He cannot build them. He feels everything. And what he feels in this human is something I have not sensed in any being for a very long time." The hall was completely silent. Every eye was on Verteth. "The humans call it warmth," he continued. "We Cathari have another word for it. We call it Velthoric. It means the light that lives in the heart. We believed it existed only in legends. We thought it was something our ancestors made up to give them hope during the dark times. But this child," he looked at Daniel, "this child says he feels it in you. In all of you." Daniel met the old Cathari's eyes. "We are not perfect," he said quietly. "We have done terrible things. We have hurt each other in ways that shame us. But we have also loved. We have sacrificed ourselves for strangers. We have crossed oceans and climbed mountains and reached for the stars because something inside us refuses to stop hoping. That is what we are. That is what we bring to the Concord. Not weapons, not power, just the stubborn belief that tomorrow can be better than today." Verteth stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Perhaps," he said, "we have judged you too quickly." The boy smiled again, and this time, Daniel could have sworn he saw something like a smile on Verteth's ancient face as well. The great hall aboard the Eternal Vigil had transformed. Where once there had been tension and distrust, something new had taken its place. The alien representatives from the 12 species of the Concord were no longer watching with cold judgment. They were watching with wonder. Verteth rose slowly from his knees. His old body moved stiffly, but there was new energy in his movements. He turned to face the assembled crowd and raised his hands for silence. "For 5,000 years," he began, his voice carrying across the vast space, "the Galactic Concord has stood as a shield against chaos. We have chosen our members carefully, accepting only those species that have proven themselves worthy of trust. Today, we were asked to judge humanity, a species known for violence and conflict and self-destruction. He paused, looking down at Daniel and the child, who had finally removed his hand from the human's heart, but now stood close beside him, as if he had found a friend he did not want to leave. I came to this meeting prepared to reject them, Verteth admitted. I had studied their history. I had seen their wars. I believed they were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too broken to join us. But I had forgotten something important. I had forgotten that every species in the Concord was once young. Every civilization made mistakes before learning wisdom, including my own. Murmurs spread through the crowd. It was rare for a Cathari leader to admit weakness or error. Verteth's honesty shocked many of the observers. This child, Verteth continued, gesturing to the boy, possesses a gift that my people have not seen for centuries. He can feel the truth of what lives inside others. He cannot be fooled by words or appearances. He sees directly into the heart. And when he looked at these humans, he did not run in fear. He did not sense the violence and cruelty that I expected. He sensed warmth. The old Cathari turned to face the other representatives of the Concord. I ask all of you now, can we ignore this? Can we dismiss what this child has shown us? He has no reason to lie. He has no politics, no agenda, no understanding of what is at stake. He simply felt something true, and he acted on it. Perhaps we should learn from him. One of the other representatives stepped forward, a tall being with 4 arms and skin the color of old copper. Maria identified him through Daniel's earpiece as Ambassador Thresh of the Vorn, one of the species that had supported humanity's application. High Counselor Verteth speaks wisdom, Thresh said in a deep, rumbling voice. I have watched this moment carefully. The human commander had every reason to pull away from the child. His training told him to avoid contact. His orders demanded it. Yet when faced with a frightened child reaching out for connection, he chose compassion over protocol. He chose the heart over the rules. Another representative spoke up, this one a small, floating creature that looked like a ball of soft light. We have debated for hours about humanity's worthiness. We have listed their crimes and failures. But perhaps we have been measuring the wrong things. Perhaps the true test of a species is not how they behave when everything is going well, but how they respond when faced with the unexpected. This human passed that test. One by one, the representatives began to speak in favor of humanity. Even those who had opposed membership earlier now seemed uncertain. The scene they had witnessed had changed something in the room. It had made the humans seem less like dangerous strangers and more like beings, capable of growth and connection. Finally, Verteth raised his hands again. We will take a formal vote. Each member of the Concord will state their position. Let history record this moment. The voting took only a few minutes. When it was done, the result was clear. Humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Concord by a vote of 11-1. Only one species had voted against, and even their representative admitted that the vote was more out of tradition than true opposition. The human delegation stood in stunned silence. Lisa Monroe had tears in her eyes. Maria was smiling so wide it looked like her face might split. The security officers were looking at each other in disbelief. Daniel felt the boy tug at his sleeve. He looked down at those huge dark eyes. The child spoke a single word in broken English, a word that Maria had apparently taught him during the long hours of negotiation. His pronunciation was strange, shaped by a mouth that had never spoken human languages before. But the meaning was clear. Friend. Daniel knelt again, bringing himself to the boy's level. Yes, he said softly. Friend. The boy's mother approached slowly. She no longer looked afraid. She looked grateful, relieved, amazed. She spoke in her own language, and Maria translated. "His name is Calveth," she said. "It means hope in our language." When he was born, I did not understand why he was so different from other children. I thought his gift was a curse. But now I see that he was meant for this moment. He was meant to be the bridge between our people. Daniel nodded. "Then we owe him a great debt. All of humanity owes him." Verteth approached them one last time. His ancient face had changed. The coldness was gone, replaced by something that almost looked like warmth. "Commander Daniel Hayes," he said formally, "you have shown us something today that we did not expect. Your species is young and flawed and capable of great destruction. But you are also capable of something else, something that my people have forgotten how to feel. You carry light inside you, and that light can reach even the coldest hearts." He extended his hand, palm up, in what Maria explained was a Cathari gesture of deep respect. "Welcome to the Galactic Concord. May your people bring warmth to the stars." Daniel placed his hand over Verteth's, completing the gesture. Around them, the hall erupted into something that sounded almost like applause, though it came in dozens of different forms depending on the species. Later, when the ceremonies were over and the treaties were signed, Daniel found himself standing by a window on the eternal vigil, looking out at the stars. Kelveth stood beside him, the small boy who had changed everything by running toward a stranger instead of away. "Why did you come to me?" Daniel asked quietly, knowing that Maria would translate. The boy thought for a moment before answering. "Everyone else is cold inside. Even my own people. They build walls around their hearts. They are afraid of feeling too much. But you were different. You felt like home." Daniel looked down at the child. This small alien who had seen through all the politics and fear and found something simple and true. "You know," Daniel said, "where I come from, children are taught that the universe is full of wonders waiting to be discovered. I think today I discovered the greatest wonder of all." "What is that?" "That no matter how far we travel, no matter how different the beings we meet, some things stay the same. The need for connection, the desire for friendship, the hope that we are not alone." Kelveth smiled his strange, beautiful smile. "You are never alone now." Daniel smiled back. "No, I suppose we are not." Outside the window, the stars burned on, eternal and unchanging. But something had changed in the galaxy that day. A door had opened. A bridge had been built. And it had all started because a small boy felt something warm in a stranger's heart and decided to run toward it instead of away. That is the way it always starts, Daniel thought. With one small act of trust, with one moment of courage, with one child who believes that strangers can become friends, and that is what makes us human.